Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Rogue One started off pretty much the same way that Andor started off, with the protagonist murdering someone. In Rogue One, Cassian Andor is forced to quickly make an assessment of his informant Tivik. He has a broken arm and he's unable to climb out of the situation they found themselves in. Cassian perceives Tivik as a weak individual and deems him unlikely to be able to withstand the rigors of Imperial interrogation, and so he shoots him in the back, protecting the vital information hidden within his head. Then in Andor, Cassian is stopped by two corporal guards who want to shake him down. Cassian fights back, accidentally killing one of them, and then proceeds to execute the second corpo guard because he's a witness. So these scenes, these murders, not accidental killings or casualties of war, are all that more shocking because of how Tony Gilroy writes these scenes. I mean, we get to see Tivik's fear and helplessness when he realizes that he's not going to escape this situation.
It's all falling apart. Saul's right. There's spies everywhere.
We also get to see the care that Kravis Dressers has for his partner Verlo once he realizes he's not breathing.
Verlo!
The director chooses to humanize Andor's victims, making his actions that much more difficult to swallow. It's what makes Rogue One and Andor so different from other series in Star Wars. I mean, can you imagine having Luke Skywalker in the original film murder another moisture farmer who's attempting to report him to the Imperials because of those droids he found? Even with the Mandalorian, when he walks into that bar in the beginning of the series and ends up killing a bunch of random thugs, they were completely nameless. We aren't given a chance to empathize with them at all. Unlike the other protagonists, Cassian, for the rest of Rogue One and for the rest of Andor, must redeem himself from the great sin he commits in the outset. Andor even talks about this internal struggle that he has within him.
Every time I walked away from something I wanted to forget, I told myself it was for a cause that I believed in, a cause that was worth it. Without that, we're lost.
This solves my biggest gripe with Star Wars, and that's how they portray the rebellion. It is super romanticized. The rebels are clean-cut and heroic, and every death they suffer has a meaning. The Empire is made up of robotic individuals, and when millions of them die in a gigantic explosion, we're not even given a moment to think about it. The truth is, when any activity involves a bunch of individuals potentially thinking about killing each other, things stop making sense, and chaos envelops everything. There's no time to think about your moral values or even your ideology. It's just survival mode. Rogue One and now Andor has always been a more truthful representation of what it means to fight in a rebellion. They show us a chaotic organization made up of idealists, guns for hire, and everything else in between. And they're not all heroes. Some are cold-blooded killers, some are criminals, some are thieves, others are just straight-up lunatics. What you'll generally find missing in an early rebellion are normal people. Individuals with a stable psyche, life, and job. Because by the time the normies join the rebellion, it's already a full-blown revolution. The reality is, any early rebellion is going to be full of people that you might not want to have an acquaintance with. A lot of these people already walk on the peripherals of society. They're devoted to an extreme cause after all. And although we hero worship them in the films and movies, in real life, these individuals are extremely complicated people. That's not to say that the cause they fight for and are willing to die for is not noble, or their actions aren't heroic in a way. That is a completely different issue. And the Empire did need to be taken down. It's just that most people are way too sane to do what was necessary for that to happen. Which brings us to the subject of Luthen Rael. But before we begin, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, Hero Wars, an online RPG action game that has both PvP and PvE elements. Collect heroes, upgrade them, and equip them with awesome loot and treasures as you fight across 130 different missions and more than 6 different game modes. And for this Halloween, Hero Wars has a new event called The Portal. If 10,000 players sign up for the game before October 31st, the portal will be open. And not only will everyone in-game be gifted with unique items, but they'll also be doing a giveaway of 160 Amazon digital gift cards ranging from $50 to $500. All you have to do to be a part of this sweepstake is download this game by checking out the link down below or scanning that QR code right there. Then sign up for a free game account and get an in-game ID, and you'll be a part of the giveaway. Then on November 2nd, winners will be drawn out of a pool of players, and shortly after that, they will display the winners' names on the website HeroWarsPortal.com. Thanks again to Hero Wars for sponsoring today's episode. Go play Hero Wars now. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. I'll admit, there are certain actors, when they come on the screen, I just get blown away by them. All objectivity out the window. And Stellan Skarsgård, who portrays Luthen Rael, is one of those individuals who triggers this mentality for me. And so, admittedly, instead of focusing on what his character was doing in the first few episodes of Andor, I was just focusing on the performance. I love this one scene with him. He's just dropped Andor off for the Aldhani heist like a soccer mom would drop her kids off at practice on the weekends. He's heading back to Coruscant, but before he returns to the surface, he must change from being a shadowy architect for a resistance network to a delightful curator of rare trinkets and artifacts from across the galaxy. He changes his appearance physically, he adorns a wig, a luxurious robe, he puts on an assortment of rings, but it's not until Luthen practices a smile. Something that he's probably not done the entire mission abroad. That we see a change in his posture. The muscle memory on his face releases much needed neurosignals to his brain to activate the happier, more relaxed side of his mind, helping him ease into his new character. This scene was simply amazing. I was blown away by it, and it didn't sketch me out at all, you know, that creepy smile on his face. Instead, what I thought was, oh, these are the necessary actions one takes when they're trying to stay hidden right beneath the very elites you're trying to overthrow. I naturally attributed morality and good with Luthen Rael, and I let this manipulative side of him pass as just a small, weird quirk. He's just a skilled thespian about to take a stage. When reality blends with fiction, it really can get confusing. And while his cause is good, it's the same cause that Mon Mothma and Cassian Andor will fight for. Is he, Luthen Rael, as an individual good as well? Well, good is a very simplistic and vague term, and in a Tony Gilroy film, it's objectively very hard to determine whether characters are good or not. They're all very complex. And so the term good is meaningless outside of the philosophical debates carried out by the pampered upper crust nobility on Alderaan. The better question is, will Luthen Rael's personality steer him towards a destructive path? As the one Saw Gerrera found himself on when the very ground met the sky and swallowed him whole on Jedha. Will Luthen Rael ultimately be a necessary evil, or will he even become a burden for the rebellion? Someone who will hold the movement back because of his views of the galaxy? Well, I had to take off my rose-tinted glasses about Stellan Skarsgård and look at the character more objectively, and I began to notice some problematic things. Now, sure, when he needs Andor, he's pretty nice to him, at least in the beginning. He saved him from the Corpos, gave him a bit of Mednog, and even parted with the Kyber crystal that clearly is very important to him.
Just know it will always be worth more to me.
He even spends a considerable time trying to convince Andor that he's actually a rebel at heart and he's not in this for just the money or other cheap things.
Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real than carve off useless pieces till there's nothing left?
This is a classic coaching or maybe manipulation technique where you help an individual find some type of self-perpetuating motivation to do a task, which will ultimately help him do that task better than if he's just motivated by money or fear, let's say. And then Luthen Rael does the following. He validates Andor and explains to him how useful he is to him.
I didn't risk my ass for the Starbeth unit. I came for you.
I mean, all in all, he doesn't lie to the kid. It's not like he's lying about the risks here. This is clearly going to be a very dangerous job. And then even when he's trying to convince Vel to take on Andor, I assume that this line here is just him trying to force the situation and push it into action.
And if he's the problem?
Well, that's the advantage of renting him. He's disposable.
It's a harsh thing to say about someone, but Luthen Rael is clearly not a fool. He's just met Cassian Andor. I mean, he's done a lot of research about him, but he doesn't really know him, so to trust him 100% would be kind of strange. I also have to say that Luthen Rael reminds me a lot of those CIA handlers that you see in the Bourne series, also by Tony Gilroy. Then we get to the night of the raid. We see another version of Luthen Rael that we haven't seen before. He's neither jubilant nor deadly serious. Instead, he's just disheveled and racked with concern about the raid. He's standing there listening carefully on his space ham radio to see if there's any news about the heist. I get a sense that he has general concern about the members of his team, but perhaps I'm just projecting, again, my own thoughts here. It's not until the next episode we find out what he's actually worried about. When the news of the rebel raid reaches Coruscant, Luthen Rael reacts with sheer joy. This is actually quite an important moment, as I would find out later. Listen to what exactly Luthen is reacting about here.
Got anything from Aldhani?
Excuse me?
Aldhani. Big rebel attack last night, it's all the news.
Notice how this customer doesn't say anything about how the raid went. He doesn't mention if the rebels were successful or not, or if any of the rebels even survived. He only talks about the fact that there was an attack, and this is what Luthen Rael is celebrating. In the next episode, in a hushed conversation between him and Mon Mothma, we begin to understand a bit more about Luthen Rael's intentions. He repeats a line very similar to the one he tries to inspire Andor with.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice.
You see, Luthen Rael does care about the money, but it's actually lower on his hierarchy of needs. This is a very complex character, and he has many different needs, and he'll show his needs to different characters when he needs to manipulate or move them around, depending on the situation. When Cassian first meets him, we're led to believe that Luthen simply just wants the Star Path unit, but no, then we realize what he wants is Andor himself. But then we begin to find out more and more about Luthen Rael, and we find out that he has more needs and more wants, and those new needs and wants we learn about tend to supplant the previous ones. Instead of being wowed by his smiling transformation, maybe I should have been wary that this guy is a complete shapeshifter, a man who cannot be trusted fully. Because the reality is, the heist on Aldhani wasn't really about money ultimately. Luthen Rael confides in Mon Mothma that this entire heist was basically designed to make the Empire react, well, overreact. Do something so crazy that it would force all the people sitting on the fence to hop off and choose a side. But was Luthen Rael being impatient, or was he being decisive in carrying out this attack at this moment? We don't really know the full scale of Luthen Rael's network or how prepared it is. I mean, it's possible that Luthen Rael felt they were completely prepared, and he was more worried that a weapon not used would become stagnant and dull. But clearly, men like Luthen Rael would rather run towards death and die a slow death by 1,000 tiny cuts. Is he wrong for pushing the galaxy towards the rebellion? I mean, clearly, he cares less about the operatives on this mission than the Empire's reaction. Now, of course, Mon Mothma is shocked. She's a pacifist, and she would stay in the Senate until finally a speech he gave about the Gorman situation, which has been alluded to throughout Andor, finally forces Emperor Palpatine to sic some stormtroopers on her. It's clear that although she would be very important in keeping the rebellion alive and leading it to success, she most likely didn't have the courage or the right mindset to start the war. I mean, the person who starts the war and then runs the war can be different people.
People will suffer.
She says to the man holding an ancient mace that's designed to crush skulls. Will Luthen Rael be a necessary evil? Or will he be a good man who agrees to shoulder the moral burden of this galactic war he's about to start for Mon Mothma? Or is he going to be a loose cannon like Saw Gerrera, an agitator and an opponent to Mon Mothma? Or will he be like the legendary Corellian Garm Bel Iblis? What I worry is that as the episodes progress, Cassian Andor will continue to show us that he's a better person than our first impression of him.
How do we get to the Doctor?
And that Luthen Rael will continue to show us his true character. Now, up until this scene I'm about to show you, most of Luthen's actions have been defensible and even necessary. But then we see Kleya Markey, his assistant, meet with Vel. Kleya asks her to take out Cassian Andor because he's seen Luthen's face. Now, there's many ways to interpret this. We can't just immediately claim that Luthen Rael has ordered a hit on Andor, okay? First, it's possible that Luthen and Kleya have interpreted Andor's actions after the heist as a bit sketchy. I mean, after all, he exposed Skeen, but he also shot him. He took his fair share of the credits, but he's not hanging around to join the team, which might be an issue in itself. Now, Kleya might be acting on her own orders here. Maybe she's just trying to protect Luthen. We actually don't hear Luthen say directly to Kleya, hey, go get rid of Cassian Andor. We only hear him say the following.
Vel's the only one who traces back.
No. The thief, Andor. I wasn't careful.
And that's not the entire conversation.
You wanted this to happen. This is what it took. It's never going to be perfect.
I wanted it too much.
Two very interesting things happen here. Again, this is a very weird scene because it's the only time we see Luthen Rael disheveled, which means his guard is finally let down. We can almost assume that he is actually being honest here to the one person he seems to trust, his assistant. It confirms what we suspect, that he actually is afraid that he's too impatient and that he started this revolution a bit too early. And it makes sense, like he's been sneaking around for God knows how long. I mean, it takes a big toll on an individual. I mean, I just think about how impatient I am for the next Andor episode. I shudder to think about what he's going through here. But also, do you guys notice how Kleya talks to Luthen? It seems like they're equals. No, it almost seems like she's the one in charge.
I thought you were turning it off.
I was just going to.
You said that an hour ago. You want to be useful? Go clean some coins.
Now, a smart man, especially one with a lot of scabs and bruises and scars all over their body, will try to heed the advice of the women closest to him. Sometimes. It could be a lover, a mother, or an assistant. Is that what's going on here, or is it something else? The store is clearly a front for their operations, and Kleya is an assistant in that make-believe world, but she's the one who's recruited several of the heist team members.
I recruited Tarramin myself.
She's the one who seems to be extremely focused and on point when Luthen Rael begins to show cracks. Could it be that Luthen is simply the charismatic socialite / field agent, and it's actually Kleya who is the handler, or maybe even the mastermind? I guess we won't know until later episodes who put the hit on Cassian Andor, and at that point we'll probably figure out what exactly Luthen Rael is all about. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think, though. Is he going to be a detriment to the rebellion, or is he going to be that key factor that starts this whole show off? Well, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our coverage of Andor. And as usual, my name is Alan, and my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.